Now, from the Pope John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live. I want to thank you for tuning in, and we have a great show for you tonight. Author and Academy Award-winning screenwriter William Peter Blatty is here. He'll talk about his funny and life-affirming new novel, Crazy. And later, U.S. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry from the 1st District of Nebraska is here to talk about what the Congress will tackle in the days ahead, including the reform or repeal of health care. And finally, an encore of last week's segment on the Truth and Life Dramatized audio Bible project with actor Stacy Keach. I'll also have a new Cut to the Chase segment for you tonight on the latest news from the war on Christmas you won't want to miss. If you have a question about any of the topics, this is your show. Drop us an email. worldover@EWTN.com is the address. And now to my first guest. He is a best-selling author and screenwriter and a film director, perhaps best known for his mega hit, The Exorcist. His screenplay for the 1973 film version of his novel earned him an Academy Award. We spoke with him earlier this year when his novel Demeter was released. Bill has a brand new novel out right now. It's titled Crazy, and it is a return to his roots. The nostalgic, mysterious comic novel will remind readers that William Peter Blatty first made his name as a comic writer. Welcome, Bill Blatty, back to the program. Great to see you.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
When you took up this work, Crazy, and it really is a nostalgic, sweet tale, did you have in the back of your mind that you wanted to remind readers or yourself that you were first and foremost a comedy writer?
Well, that was certainly one thing that spurred me on to write it, but the way it actually happened was when I had finally finished my final draft of Demeter. I woke up the next morning, went down to the computer. All I have to do is have my coffee now and, check my email and have a really nice day. I don't have to slave over the computer and the novel again. And after about 25 minutes of that, I got restless, and I put up a blank Word page because, as had always happened with my comic novels, I never wrote, I mean this, a funny line. I would hear a funny line. It would drop into my head. And if I laughed a lot, I would literally say, quick, put it down.
Get it all down.
Before you forget. And one of those lines occurred. It was an opening line, which I'm not going to repeat. But I looked at it and I said, oh, dear God, the world has to see this. I can't stand this being hidden. And I'm going to have to append something to it, right? Well, before you know it, by the end of the day, I'd written, a really nice page and a half and thought no more about it. And every day would get up and go back to the typewriter. And I wasn't writing. I don't know who wrote The Exorcist, actually. It just flowed. And for me, it kept getting funnier and funnier. And the apostolic theme and intent became very, very clear. And
in this new work.
Yeah, that's why I realized that maybe it was the Holy Spirit dropped that opening line on me.
Let's talk about this book. Joey El Bueno is the... Bueno is the narrator, the central figure of this book. He is an 82-year-old screenwriter reminiscing about his youth, circa 1941 in New York. How old are you again, Bill?
82. I'll be 83 in this coming January.
There are a lot of little similarities here that I want to unpack. Yeah, and he comes across this enigma, this peculiar older girl, Jane Bent, and she intrudes on his life. And who is she?
Oh, I can't tell you really who she is. That's the surprise at the very end of the book. But she is clearly one sent to lead him back to faith, back to, well, let's say it boldly, back to salvation. And she does it in enigmatic, fantastical, paranormal, and sometimes hilarious ways.
Yeah, she's a peculiar character. Foul-mouthed, we have to say. A little foul around the edges.
The first time I heard her name in my head, Jane Bent. Oh, dear. I think that was a name I received in one of those emails from Nigeria saying, oh, please, we have $30 million ready to deposit into your account. Yeah. Mrs. Jane Bent.
Yeah, please send all of your particular information, your bank accounts, and your address. Now, she advises Joey, little Jane does, to pray. Yeah. That's one of the first things she does. And then to visit the churches, 7 churches on Holy Thursday. Now, I went back and I read your autobiographical work, I'll Tell Them I Remember You. This was about your childhood, your relationship with your mother particularly, who is the centerpiece of this book. In it, you talk about you and your mother visiting the 7 churches on Holy Thursday.
10, 12. No kidding. As long as the sun was shining, take me back. She'd hit every Catholic church she could.
So there are a lot of shades of autobiography running in and out of this work.
I did attend St. Stephen's Elementary School on 28th in New York, now called, I think, alternately Our Lady of the Scapula. Yeah, so yes, there's maybe that's why it was so easy for me to write this. It was drawing on some of my own experiences.
You also guilted your mother into buying you a jacket as a boy, which this character does to his father.
Oh, that's right. That was the most burdensome, heaviest guilt I think I can ever remember carrying. You know, that haunted me all through my maturity. Walking by on 14th Street, never forget it. I was, 10, 11.
And we got to remind people, your mother is a single mother of 5, struggling to feed you all and keep you in any domicile at this point.
Yes, she did it in 2 ways, by making homemade quince jelly and going out and peddling it on the street. And her other famous gambit, worthy of von Clausewitz, I think, was to repel all demands for future payment by the landlords. They'd come around and say, give me the cash, no check. And my mother, I would say when we lived on East 31st, she said, you shut up, you crooked landlord. I know all about you. And then slowly closed the door on her. And while the landlord wondered what it was, everybody has something to what my mother knew about it. You know, we'd get an extra 2, 3, maybe even 5 months, and before the
before return
before
visit?
The marshals came around. Oh, no return. The marshals would come back in those days. Throw it out on the.
So you all are really struggling at this point, and
comfortably destitute.
You're walking down 14th Street. You're hand in hand with your mother. You see a jacket that you want, and you tell her what?
It was the ugliest thing by my standard today that I think anyone has ever seen. It was a leather, brown, and yellow, stained yellow jacket. And I said, Mom, would you buy it for me? I wheedled and cried, and she said, no, we can't afford that. And finally, I uttered the killer line, you never buy me anything. She turned around, led me into the store. How much is it? $14. $14. She paid it. My father, at the time, who was not living with us, earned $6 a week. That will give you what my mother was giving up to me. And, well, right now, I feel very deeply sad about what I did to her.
Well, you feel, and you almost feel that sadness in this novel as well. It's communicated via this character. I want to read people just a little taste of Jane Bent's advice to Joey, the narrator of this piece. There's a moment that she reminds him when earlier he had bought a penknife for his father and a tortoiseshell comb for his sister. And he got nothing for himself that day. And she asks him how it felt, and was he as happy as eating ice cream or even seeing Gunga Din, which he did 18 times. And he says, no, it wasn't even close, that this was a much more fulfilling experience. And she says, "Are you right?" Her little eyes were flirting back and forth across my face. And she said, "That's right. When the ice cream and the chocolate are gone, all of that kind of happy goes with them. That's the difference. The other kind of happy stays. So as long as you can smile or say a kind word to someone, you can never run out of giving, which means you can never run out of happy.
Nice. Yeah, that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we all know. In fact, the word happy cannot be applied to anything I say after almost 83 years of experience, to anything but giving. All the rest is content. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Not happy.
Nothing compares.
To do that.
There's also there are sparks of spiritual clarity that run through this book, and I'll give people a little taste. It's hard because the mystery of who this little Jane is, she haunts him. She keeps reappearing through his life at different moments. It has an aspect of time travel to it. She's at different ages. It's really intriguing and peculiar. But I want to share this with people. This is what she says to him at one point. She says, "It's the world you're in now isn't the real one. The real one's waiting patiently for you while you make yourself fit to be there and be able to enjoy what it's got to offer. Maybe heaven and hell are the same place, Joey. If it were a restaurant and everything they served had lots of garlic, if you love the taste of garlic, it's heaven. But if garlic makes you vomit, it's hell. Life is learning to develop a taste for what heaven's got to offer and then growing that taste to the max. You know, soul formation."
Yeah, well, that to me is the meaning of my house has many mansions. How much happiness, once you've left the earth, have you built up an appetite to enjoy? Mm-hmm. I mean, in heaven, of course, we are happy to the max that we are able, but there can be much greater happiness for those who've formed their souls so they can absorb a whole lot more of it. I make myself unclear.
These are big. I mean, these are big topics. These are things people spend their lives wrestling with, and I think in this fictional vehicle, it makes it strangely digestible and understandable.
If you have enough hilarity and laughs and mystery all along the way, then in comes the lesson.
This is the 40th anniversary of The Exorcist coming up.
In 2011, May 2011.
Are you planning any revisions for the? I know they're re-releasing the book in a hardcover edition.
They are in this deluxe anniversary edition. Yes, the original publisher is going to be doing that. I don't know when. I think maybe in the fall. Mm-hmm. But though I wasn't asked to, years ago. After the novel finally was a big success, I remember either thinking or telling a few people, "Dear God, I was so under the gun for funds. I couldn't go without doing something else after 9 steady months. And, oh, Lord, would I love to take another, do one more polish on the novel." And lo and behold, I now have, I'm not changing anything.
40 years later.
I'm polishing it up, but I'm also adding to one of them it'll probably be one of the standout scenes, brand new scene in it. I'm doing that right now.
Connect the dots for me, if you will, before we go, between this novel, Crazy, your newest, and The Exorcist. There is, it seems to me, a sensibility you have, that we are in the middle of a continuum, that life and death are actually very close, and that we sometimes ignore the other side.
Well, we virtually almost always ignore the other side, and that is the only side, of course, that we've talked about before, that is real. Sometimes I think if we are nothing but atoms, molecular structures, no more, then we ought to be always blindly rushing irresistibly to fulfill our own selfish ends and purposes. Mm-hmm. But we don't do that. Who got the Congressional Medal of Honor a few weeks ago? Young soldier who threw himself on top of a live grenade to save his buddies, which in fact was an example cited in the 9th configuration. So Fine. The problem of evil? What about the mystery of goodness? Where'd that come from? It's all going to be okay.
Yeah, well, you make it so.
Oh,
the new
thank
novel,
you.
Crazy, explores that mystery of goodness in a unique and hilarious way. Let me put this disclaimer out right now. I don't want any letters. There is some racy language here and there in the book, but so that, it's for adults. So don't let the kiddies read it. But it has a great spiritual message. It's a lot of fun. Crazy by William Peter Blatty is available at bookstores everywhere from Forge. Bill, thanks for coming back on the program.
Thank you, Raymond.
Great to have you
Pleasure.
always. When we return, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry is here. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay with us.
You did it.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. A new party is poised to take control of Congress, and the agenda is taking shape. To discuss what the Republican-led Congress might be doing in the new year, I was recently joined by Representative Jeff Fortenberry of the 1st District of Nebraska. He has an extensive background in economics and public policy. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He's also a tireless defender of the family and the unborn. I spoke with him recently about how the new Congress will approach that recently passed health care law, the danger of Iran's nuclear capability, and the congressman's plan to honor Mother Teresa. Here's my interview with Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Take a look. Congressman Fortenberry, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Fred.
Now, you have said in an interview, I think it was with Esquire magazine, amazingly enough, you said...
Not
I think
a
it was
venue I traditionally
No, Esquire, that's
in.
fine. Men read Esquire. It's good for you to go to Esquire. This is evangelizing the culture, Congressman. I don't fault you for that.
Just don't...
It wasn't Playboy or Hustler or something dirty here. It's okay. You said that it was your theology degree that you thought was most important to your formation and has contributed most to your career in the House of Representatives. How so?
Well, I have an educational background both in economics and public policy, and I've done some work in economic development, economic research, and then in the private sector in the publishing world. But I had a deep yearning in my heart to go into the deeper questions of life. And I think developing an understanding of the philosophical dimensions of law, what is the nature of law, what is the nature of society, and being able to connect that through the study of theology was really an extraordinary preparation, a real gift for me to be able to do that, which I did, by the way, at Franciscan University of Steubenville.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
where I
that.
also met my wife.
Oh, well.
A very blessed time in many ways.
Yeah, you came away with a lot of good things from that education. Now, you're a member of the House Foreign Relations Committee, and you authored a bill called the Child Soldiers Prevention Act of 2007. Yes. This bill, though passed, continues to be violated. What's happening now? Update us on that. This was a bill to stop the exploitation of children, essentially.
Correct. It's almost unthinkable, unconscionable that certain areas of the world, recruitment of child soldiers still goes on. We've seen movies about this and such, but it is a real phenomenon in certain places. So we wrote this bill. It was incorporated in a larger piece that tries to attack the issue of human trafficking as well. But we've learned recently that the ongoing violations in a few countries, they were basically overlooked. The administration provided what we call waivers to basically participate in helping those militaries because they thought that the security implications would be too disruptive if we stopped helping these countries who do use child soldiers. So we've questioned that, have asked for the State Department and the administration to give us a broader explanation.
Can you give us examples of which countries those might be, who are in violation?
Well, you look at a place like Somalia, and you're very concerned about that. I think you remember a picture on the front page of the New York Times a while back, and again, almost like a movie set where you see a child carrying some sort of large rifle. But this actually goes on in several places throughout the world. Now, we'll try to talk to the administration about the security implications they're referring to, but we have to stay focused on this essential principle of trying to prevent this inhumane practice around the world.
Now, your party has taken control of the House in January. Yes. That will be the leadership in the House of Representatives. So much of this last election focused on reducing the deficit, bringing down the debt, and controlling spending. What specific proposals would you advance in this Congress, aside from the cessation of earmarks, which is the only thing we keep hearing? Where would you suggest we cut? What areas do we need to look at? Obviously, entitlements are a part of that.
Well, let's take a step back and look at the broader issue. We've got a budget projected for next year to be about $3.8 trillion. The House didn't even pass a budget this year. In 2008, just a few short years ago, the entire federal budget was $2.9 trillion. It's basically doubled over the last decade. About 40 cents on every dollar that's being spent is now borrowed. Now, that has a lot of implications for economic security. First of all, it's a matter of injustice because you're pushing the tax obligation into the future on children and grandchildren. Secondly, you're selling the assets of the country to pay for this overseas to countries like China. That has national security implications. And third is you may create an inflationary effect, which is another form of taxation as the government is tempted to monetize this debt, print money. And that's hardest. It hits the poor the hardest and those on fixed incomes like seniors. They can't adjust to that. So this indebtedness, this deficit spending and the huge amount of debt is actually a form of taxation. It's just hidden from everyone.
Right.
That's why this became such a prominent issue, I think, in the last election. We have to get the fiscal house in order. You have to right this ship. It's in no one's interest in this country for Congress and the administration to continue to spend like this.
Do you support any of these recommendations of this commission, this bipartisan commission that proposed a whole host of cuts and cutbacks?
At least it's a starting point for some dialogue. I mean, there was reaction both from the right and left dismissing the whole thing. I don't think that's fair. Certain things are going to be highly controversial.
Well, you've got to look at entitlements. I mean, otherwise you can't really rein this thing in, can you?
It's very, very difficult to think about the growth of entitlements and a balanced budget at the same time. Now, there's some basic reforms that I think we should take that are structural in nature. I support a balanced budget requirement in the House. I've supported that for years. That'll be the first bill dropped in this new session. I'll be on that bill. I also support giving the president a line item veto. I supported it for President Bush. I'll support it under President Obama. And third, I think going to a biennium budgeting cycle.
I want to change gears for a moment and talk about politics for a minute. 53% of the Catholic vote swung to the Republican Party this time from 2008. How do you interpret that? And why do you think Catholics were listening to this message in 2010 and didn't in 2008? What's changed?
I think Catholics and many people across the country looked at President Obama as a very good family man, a very good father. He spoke in the language of social justice. And on the abortion issue, though, he sort of tried to thread the middle and didn't appear to be real threatening. But frankly, President Obama, sadly so, is a very pro-abortion president. I think Catholics noticed that. One of the first things that he did was overturn by executive order the Mexico City policy, which allows for federal tax dollars, people's hard-earned income that goes to the government, to be used, to be given to entities that promote and foster abortion. One of the first things he did, and I think people began to notice that and question why he has taken on such an aggressive disposition in not upholding a fundamental tenet of justice, namely the protection of innocent unborn life and protecting women from the tragedy of abortion. And this saddens me. I have spoken to him directly about conscience protections in health care law, spoken to him directly about a Care for Life Act that I had that tries to remove the pressure that someone might be under because they're in a situation where they can't afford the care and they're worried about their well-being.
What was his response when you brought these concerns?
He actually seemed to respond. He said, positively, he said, I'm very interested in that. And that was very early in after he was elected.
No response afterward.
No. I clearly, he has a very different agenda in this regard. I think Catholics took note of that, and it's very unfortunate.
Given the shape of the final health care bill that passed, that it would appear funds abortion via some of these plans, what will be the posture of the Republican Party and your posture individually as a congressman? How do you repeal this or roll back, particularly these concerning parts, abortion as well as, you mentioned it a moment ago, these conscience clauses that don't exist in the current health care bill?
I think the best thing to do is to try to repeal the bill. But, however, I'm very interested in health care reform. But we need the right kind of reform that would actually reduce costs and improve outcomes while we try to protect vulnerable persons. Unfortunately, this bill simply shifts costs to more unsustainable government spending and will reduce health care liberties.
What do you think is going to be the initial approach to this health care bill? Do you think they'll try to defund part of it? And then, I mean, repeal is out of the question. I mean, the president's not going to veto his own, he's not going to allow his own bill to go down in flames.
I think so many Americans are upset by this that to not make an attempt to repeal would probably be going against the political tide. So I think there will be an attempt to do that. There's a Senate where that would be a problem. The president would veto it. So the fallback provisions are debating individual portions of it, potentially defunding individual portions of it, crafting new legislations. I intend to draft, I already have a draft bill on the rights of conscience, and maybe you can amend it to carve out protections that are essential. So
you are on a subcommittee for the Middle East.
Yes.
I want to talk to you for a moment. The bishops recently sounded a cry about the fledgling and dying Christian community in Iraq. This is one of the most ancient branches of the church. St. Thomas the Apostle evangelized that region. We have a population there that is in collapse. I mean, the numbers I'm hearing, you had 1 million people, 2 million people there at one time. That's no longer the case. What do you propose be done? And I know you recently talked to State Department officials. What are they telling you?
In fact, I did just have a meeting with the State Department. I called them to bring them into the office so that we could try to collaborate on this. Yes, the Iraqi Christian minority was a flourishing population at one time, approaching, I believe, about 2 million people. Now it's hard to get an estimate, but we think it's only about 400,000. There's a diaspora going on, not only in Iraq, but from Christians fleeing throughout the Middle East, where they're under severe persecution in various countries. If you lose the Christian population in the Middle East, you're losing a real leavening influence there. And these ancient rites have a rightful place and can rightfully claim to be a part of that important historical, ancient, and in a certain sense where we all come from, that part of the world. So it's very tragic. As you know, just recently, 60, we believe it's about 60 worshipers in a church, in a Catholic church in Baghdad, came under siege. Yeah. They were killed. Can you imagine being in Mass? The doors shut or locked, and people began to blow themselves up and kill the innocent during Holy Mass. Yeah. So we'll work on this. That's my pledge. It is a very difficult situation. The government is very fragile. They have a new governing coalition. We will continue to push that these concerns be an important part of that. The Iraqi government does have an Office for Human Rights Protection run by a Christian. It's a part of the higher offices there. So that's a vehicle by which we can help assure Iraqi Christians as well as other minority populations in Iraq, many of whom are refugees in my district.
Iran, we've seen its nuclear ambitions realized. Your thoughts on how to contain what might be another rogue nuclear state?
This is a regime that clearly has hegemonic interest throughout the Middle East, is trying to leverage its authority. It's run by a sort of authoritarian religious autocracy, and it's very dangerous situation. So clearly you've got to have a two-track process where you're pressuring the Iranians, and we have to do that through all economic and other means that we have, but also, I believe, keeping the door open to potential diplomatic relations in the hope that someone rational will come along and say, this is not in the best interest of the Iranian people or in their interest in joining the responsible members of the international community.
I want to change gears for a moment to this resolution that you introduced to the House, Resolution 1615, and it is to commemorate Mother Teresa on the occasion of her centenary. What inspired this, and did you author this?
I did author it. What inspired it clearly is the anniversary of her birthday, but perhaps something a little bit more important. Yeah. Here we sit in a very fractured political time. There's deep philosophical divides. But I thought, maybe for a moment we can take a pause and honor someone's life who was guided by the essentials, the permanent things that last. Someone who stood before presidents and kings and queens, but never strayed from talking about what was essential, what was true, what was beautiful. And so hopefully the House will bring this up, because I think we could use a little bit of that.
But no commitment from the soon-to-be ex-Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, yet?
No commitments. We'll keep working.
What most inspires you of her example?
I think, frankly, it was her size. Here was this diminutive person. I remember one time watching on TV, she was with Pope John Paul, and he was sitting on one side of the stage. I don't remember where it was. She was sitting on the other. Just this humble, quiet presence who spoke in simple sentences, but in the most powerful way.
Very good. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, thanks
Pleasure
so
to
much
be
for
with
being
you.
here. We hope to see you
so
again
much.
soon. When we return, Carl Amari and actor Stacy Keach on the new and only Catholic Dramatized audio Bible, available anywhere, The Truth and Life Dramatized Audio Bible. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Last week, we brought you an in-depth preview of my latest project, The Truth and Life Dramatized Audio Bible. In case you missed it in the Thanksgiving crush, you're forgiven. Truth and Life is the only Catholic, fully dramatized, word-for-word audio Bible available anywhere. It features a terrific cast of renowned actors, including Michael York, Brian Cox, Blair Underwood, and other incredible actors, including my guest tonight, Stacy Keach. Joining me to discuss the project is my co-producer on the project, Mr. Carl Amari. Later, via satellite, we're joined by Stacy Keach from New York. Take a look. Carl, it was fantastic working with you, and this was partially your vision that brought, and certainly your work that brought this to completion. Why did you feel we needed an audio Bible like this, of this Revised Standard Version, the Catholic edition?
Well, there isn't one, first of all. There's not a dramatized Catholic audio Bible, and I thought there should be one. And I'm a big believer in audio. I love audio drama. I love the art form that is radio drama. And I thought, why not take, to me, one of the greatest mediums and match it with the greatest story ever told, the Bible.
Now, this was a personal thing for you. I mean, there was a personal story that sort of motivated you to do this. What was it?
Well, having children, 3 children, we read to them the Bible. And one night, my son said to me, Dad, what does that mean? And I had a hard time explaining. It was part of the Old Testament. And I was actually a little mystified, perplexed. And so I thought, I really need to know more about and understand the Word, because it is confusing sometimes. And being a fan of radio drama and having licensed thousands of radio shows over my career, and loving radio shows like Gunsmoke and The Lone Ranger and The Shadow and Jack Benny.
And you rehabbed a lot of those old shows, those old radio dramas that people will remember, right?
Yeah. I was very fortunate to get to know Stacy's father, Stacy Keach's father, who produced the series Tales of the Texas Rangers.
Really?
George Burns, Milton Berle, these legends of the golden age of radio. And I licensed the radio shows and put them back on the air on hundreds of radio stations and put them out on, at the time, cassette tape, which is...
You're dating yourself,
which is no
Carl.
more, yeah. And then CD. And so I just fell in love with the medium. I fell in love with radio drama and how it matched with the great performances in music and sound effects, how that theater of the mind is so powerful. And so I thought, why don't I take both of my loves, the Bible and radio drama, and marry the two?
Yeah, what I love about this audio Bible is it is not your run-of-the-mill kind of single narrator Bible, which I often call that. This is an audio Bible you can get in an accident to. Not this one. This is lively. You have the sound effects that creep in throughout. There's an original score, 70 actors, and some world-class actors here bring their best game to the table. Among them, one of my favorites, Stacy Keach, who's joining us from New York. Stacy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Now, Stacy, I was thrilled to see you recently here in Washington, D.C. You did an incredible production of King Lear, and I've seen you so many times in film and television and on stage. What drew you to a project like this, to this Truth and Life audio Bible?
Well, I was listening to what you were talking with Carl about, and I certainly concur with what he said. One of the things I think is important is that people who rely on the Bible for spiritual sustenance oftentimes have a priest or somebody in their domain that is unable to interpret the Bible in terms of, or to give the Bible a kind of life, a kind of excitement, a kind of drama that it has when you read it. And the great thing that Carl has done is he's given us actors who are able to dramatize the stories of the various people that they're portraying in the context and in the landscape of a radio show. It's almost like an audio movie. It's like when you listen to it, it comes to life in a way that it's impossible for it to come to life in either church or Bible school. And I think Bible schools probably will use Truth or Lie. I'm sure they will, as a matter of fact, as a means of teaching, because it not only entertains, but it also teaches. It also gives you an insight into the Bible in a way that we've never heard before.
Mm-hmm. I want to give people a little preview. This is a little audio clip of Stacy Keach as John, and when we come back, we'll talk about your playing this role. Here's Stacy Keach performing the Gospel of John.
Peter then came out with the other disciple, and they went toward the tomb. They both ran. But the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen cloths lying, and the napkin which had been on his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not know the scripture, that he must rise from the dead.
Stacy, how did you prepare for a role like this?
Well, the first thing you do, of course, is you go to the book. You read the book, and then you read the scholarship surrounding it as much as you possibly can. I mean, you could spend a lifetime reading the scholarship surrounding the Bible. There's no question about that. But I was very concerned. The thing that I wanted to do with John, I wanted to make him personal, intimate, because he was Jesus' best friend. And I wanted to convey that sense of his devotion and his objectivity. And I wanted to make sure that there was a differentiation between John in the Gospel, in the book of John, and Revelations. But I didn't want Revelations to be a doomsday scenario. I've never felt that a lot of people interpret it that way. But I think that the images in Revelations are so startling that they're awe-inspiring. They create a sense of majesty and mystery and absolute the kind of awe that I think is very much akin to a feeling of spirituality.
Right. No, there's a lot of in your interpretation of it too. In those words, there's a lot of prefigurement of the Mass and the ritual that would come from the Catholic faith, and you hear that in your particular rendition. It is not the kind of on-the-nose, gloom and doom account that one expects when you encounter the words of Revelation.
I know it. Well, it's an astonishing book, and I mean, I think the images of Christ with a sword have baffled scholars even to this day.
Stacy, I want to play you referenced Jesus a little earlier, as we would, talking about the Bible. I want to give people a little taste. This is Neil McDonough, who's a fantastic actor who plays the role of Jesus in the Truth and Life Dramatized Audio Bible. Here he is in the studio.
Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense to repay everyone for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end.
Carl, tell me about the casting of Neil McDonough. Why him? The audience will remember in recent days he was on Desperate Housewives, and then he was cast in a television series. I think it was an ABC series, and they wanted him to take part in a sex scene, and he refused, largely because of his Catholic faith.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. It was all over the news, and it just happened to be at a time that I was honing in on who do I want to cast as Jesus. And this big Variety article came out about how he walked away literally from millions of dollars because he would not do a provocative scene as the lead in this series, and saying because he is a devout Catholic and family man, and he just won't do it. So they fired him. And I called his agent right around that time and told her what we were doing. And she said, let me take it to him. And within 10 minutes, she called back and said he would absolutely love and be a dream come true to play the role.
No, for Neil, this was obviously a labor of love. I mean, you hear it in the performance as well.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the other actors here. Blair Underwood, who's in The Event on NBC,
Yes.
a fantastic actor, great voice. He plays the role of Mark. Why Blair for that role?
Well, Blair is a good friend of mine and a devout Christian, and so I called on him and asked him if he would do this, and he said yes immediately. I mean, he loves the Lord, and he loves radio drama. Yeah. And it was an easy yes for him.
Yeah, and Michael York, who we've worked with before, is Luke. Narrates Luke. Now, let's talk about the particular approach, and then I want to bring Stacy back in. All of these actors who are playing the apostles, they are narrating, in essence, their own account, their own gospel.
Right.
Why that approach?
Well, I just think it's fascinating for them to tell the story through their eyes, and but then be part of the story as well. And it's just great. I think that's really the way it should be. I didn't want to have a narrator telling the story. I wanted the person telling the story.
Stacy, it's one of the things I love about this Truth and Life audio Bible, and your performance stands out so starkly in that each actor who plays one of these apostles really brings a new personality and their own stamp to the story. Even though you hear the same story, in essence, 4 times, it's through different eyes. Were you conscious of that as you approached this, that the audience would have heard this story twice by the time it gets to you?
No, because I think that we have to create it as if it's the first time and the only time. Even though there are references, slight references, with Luke and Mark and John. But no, John, for me, stands alone. The interesting thing is that the Bible, those men were all different. And I think one of the great things about having different people playing those roles is that difference is accentuated, and it's easy to distinguish between the different interpretations of the same story from these different points of view.
Stacy, tell me, you are a Christian man. I know you have your own faith. How has this deepened your faith, taking part in this project
I think
and playing the Apostle John?
It's every time I have the opportunity to get into a biblical character and do the research and revisit those words, I think it's an inspiration, and it absolutely inspires and strengthens and supports my faith. It grows. And I think the same thing happens when you listen. I was listening the other night to The Truth and Life, to some other parts that I wasn't involved with, and I found it deeply inspiring and very, very satisfying in terms of being spiritually consoling.
It draws you in. What I love about it is it puts you in the present moment. Mother Angelica, who founded this network, often talked about living in the present moment. When you hear these actors performing these characters and all the sound effects, the original score, the other actors coming in, there is a sense that you're in the middle of the action. And as one of the reviews I read recently said, it's not overproduced. It's just enough to be real.
Well, that's key, because when you're dealing with these words, you want the words to be heard first. I mean, the words are the most important thing. And when you use world-class actors like Stacy Keach, Michael York, Blair Underwood, they bring something to it that just a person reading cannot. You accentuate that with just the right amount of sound effects and a beautiful score, which is an original score. It's scored like a film. It's super powerful because it's a landscape. Your imagination is a landscape that's boundless. So you're there. You really are there when you're listening.
My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Saviour, for he has regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name.
How long did this take to produce this from start to finish?
This was a year and a half. Year and a half from start to finish, and I just have to really say that the director, Brenda Knoll, is a Bible scholar, and she also had theologians at her beck and call,
consulting,
and really helped the actors because the inflection. You can say the words one way. If the inflection is wrong, it's all wrong.
Well, and the pronunciation of some of these names.
Yes.
This one begat that one, begat that one, begat that one. I mean,
poor Sean Astin.
Poor Sean Astin had the whole litany. Yeah, he had the whole Matthew litany.
Does a great job.
No, it's an exceptional project. And Stacy, how difficult was it for you? Because this is not a dramatization that takes liberty with the Gospels. It is word for word the Revised Standard version, Catholic edition. That had to be a bit of a challenge as an actor, right?
Well, yes and no. Yeah, definitely a challenge in the sense that you want it to be clear and eloquent and reflect the poetry that exists, I think, but it also liberates you from having to improvise. I think anytime you do something, Shakespeare's is very much in the same mode. You don't mess around with the words there. You play the words the way they're written, and they work, and they do work.
Yeah, well, in your voice, they really work. I mean, it's one of my favorite Gospels. I was listening to it in the car, and we play it for our kids, and we're driving. With all of the commuting we all do, and living in Washington, it's an hour to get to the grocery and back. And we'll put it on for the kids, and they're really drawn in in a way that I've put other single narrator Bibles on, and they're like the driver, they're sleeping. This really draws them in, and I think holds their attention. Is that what you've been hearing?
It really makes it fun to listen to. I mean, these are great stories, and when you get to see them in your imagination, kids absolutely are drawn to it.
Stacy, when you were working on this, did you have a sense of the power of proclaiming these words? I think so often they're confined to the page, and people begin to think of them in a bookish way. To my mind, they don't really come to life until they're out of the mouth of a living human being and hopefully someone who knows what to do with them.
Right. Well, I think you're absolutely right. We tried, or I tried, and I know the other actors, many of the other actors work in the same way, to make it as personal as possible and to create it as if it were happening at the moment, so that these are not words that were written down 2,000 years ago and are now being proclaimed. These are words that are being created on the spot as it happens. You're in the midst of the evolution and the birth of these words from these particular people, so that you're hearing them for the first time.
No, and that stands out from this production. Stacy, before we let you go, tell us what you're doing next and where people can see you.
Well, I'm in rehearsal for a play in New York at Lincoln Center, a new play by John Robin Bates called Other Desert Cities. Wonderful play about a Republican family living in Palm Springs in 2004, and they talk about a tragic event in their lives 28 years earlier where their son rebelled against all the values of the family. It was a long-haired hippie and went out and bombed a Marine recruiting station, killed a man, and then presumably committed suicide. The daughter has come back to the house in Palm Springs at Christmas time, to reveal that she has written a book about this, and she's going to publish this book, which causes the family to go into an uproar. We're very excited about it. We start previews on the 16th of December. We open January 13th, and we play until the end of February. Lincoln Center's Mitzi Newhouse Theater.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to see it now. So I'll be seeing you in New York before long, Stacy. And, of course, so many remember you as Mike Hammer. And I've heard Carl has even a set of audio productions, new adventures of Mike Hammer that I know you all have
Yes, we just finished a new adventure. Yeah. Encore for
that's
Murder.
Something to look forward to. Stacy Keach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. And before we go, Carl, just with you, what are your long-term hopes for a project like this? I mean, I know you didn't do this just for one season. You want this to go on, I imagine.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd love to do the Old Testament next, and that will probably take 3 to 4 years to do it. We're starting to think about that now, and I just hope that families will gather together and listen to this as a unit. You know, back in the golden age of radio, I always thought it was fascinating. I didn't grow up during the golden age of radio, but my parents used to say, you know, we used to huddle around the radio and we'd have supper, and then huddle around the radio and listen to Ozzie and Harriet or Jack Benny. And I hope people will do that with this, because it's the New Testament, but it's also a radio drama.
You know, a lot of Catholics think they've heard these words. They sit in Mass, they listen to them, a little bit is read each week. I can tell you, after listening to this and being in on the editing of this, listening to the actors shape these performances, when you hear these words in the mouths of actors who have thought deeply about them, there's a new light that is almost turned on them.
Yes.
And this product particularly has the endorsement of Archbishop Dolan of New York, now the president of the Bishops' Conference, Cardinal Raymond Burke in Rome, and an intro by the Pope. I mean, it's really a first-class product, and something I know you're proud of.
And I have to thank B Media, because B Media lived this with me. B Media in the Chicago area. They had all of their engineers. We had about 20 engineers working on this for a year and a half, and a magnificent studio that did all of the editing and put this all together. And I want to thank Jim McLean and everyone at B Media.
Before we go, I want to share with you a little clip of Michael York as Luke. Just listen to this before we go.
For many demons had entered him, and they begged Jesus not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now, a large herd of swine was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let them enter these. So he gave them leave.
That's Michael York as Luke, one of the many great performances on this Bible. Sean Astin and John Rhys Davies of the Lord of the Rings fame also took part in this audio Bible. Julia Ormond is just wonderful as Mary, the Mother of God. You can see clips of some of those performances at truthandlifebible.com. The Truth and Life Dramatized Audio Bible is available at bookstores anywhere and everywhere and online. But you can only get the special EWTN version through EWTN's religious catalog. Go to my website, RaymondArroyo.com, click on the banner up top, and it takes you directly to the order page. This special EWTN edition includes an exclusive CD of Mother Angelica's teachings on the Scripture. It makes a wonderful Christmas gift, and one you want to keep. Now, before we go, let's cut to the chase. Anyone driving into New York during Christmas via the Lincoln Tunnel will be treated to this billboard. Against a stark blue sky, the shadows of the three wise men, the Nativity, complete with Mary and Joseph and the Christ child, can be clearly seen. There's even a star overhead. The ad reads, "You know, it's a myth. This season, celebrate reason." The provocative billboard comes courtesy of the kind souls at American Atheists. The group's leader says the campaign is designed to show that Christians don't have a monopoly on the winter solstice and will hopefully draw atheists out of the closet. I didn't know they were in the closet. I was intrigued when I first saw the billboard because it demonstrates that even atheists are getting religion. They're rallying around their own dogma, so-called reason, and they're downright evangelical about it. I mean, why else would you design and erect your own devotional display outside the Lincoln Tunnel? You see, these fundamentalist atheists now have something they believe in, and they're taking steps to let everybody know about it and seeking converts. American atheists insist that 15 to 20% of Americans have no religious affiliation, according to polls, and therefore closeted atheists are everywhere. I wouldn't be so sure. Poll after poll shows that more than 90% of Americans believe in God. That doesn't sound like an atheist groundswell to me. So who's being unreasonable here? And is it reasonable to trounce on the beliefs of millions of Christians during their high holy days, going so far as to declare their belief in Jesus a myth? I've never heard any of these atheist groups creating a billboard declaring Muhammad a myth or Abraham a myth, though surely that's what they believe. That would be unreasonable, wouldn't it? And dangerous, maybe. The fact is, this irritating, provocative, cheap shot at Christmas is unreasonable as well as inaccurate. History and even astronomy vouches for the reality of Christ's coming. And it's hardly news that Christ was likely born in the springtime and that the church merely sanctified a pagan celebration in the winter, declaring it Christmas. Such is the power of religion and history, all very reasonable things. But there's apparently light at the end of the Lincoln Tunnel. This week, a new ad appeared on the New York side of the tunnel. It shows Mary and Joseph and the babe with the inscription, "You know it's real. This season, celebrate Jesus. Merry Christmas from the Catholic League." So in the span of a few minutes, commuters who travel to Gotham can now travel from unbelief to belief. One hopes that even the atheists enjoy the trip. Well, that's all the time we have. Until next week, you can find updates and the occasional commentary by following me on Twitter at twitter.com/Raymond Arroyo or on my Facebook fan page. And Christmas is coming. To that end, the prayers and personal devotions of Mother Angelica is still in bookstores everywhere and also makes a great Christmas gift. Until next time, you be sure to join us. We'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. Bye now.